Hey guys, we're gonna get started in just a minute here. I know there's no sound, so it's kind of weird, but just gotta figure a few things out here, and we'll be right with you. We'll be right with you. Just a moment. Here we go in 3, 2, 1, and we are live, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the stream. I am with a very special guest, Nicholas Wansbutter. He is a Canadian lawyer from Stratford, Ontario, a criminal lawyer. And he also has a YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to. A lot of great informational stuff at Don't Talk TV. And thanks for joining me, Nicholas.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and I guess don't talk is from like you don't talk to the cops. Is that the idea?
Absolutely. Don't talk to the police. Don't talk to the state. I mean, don't talk to CSIS, for example. I mean, I never thought as a criminal defense lawyer I'd be helping people out with CSIS, but I've had to do that recently for people essentially committing the crime of existing while white is what I call it. They, going out for a hike with a couple other guys of similar background, and now CSIS starts harassing them. Had that happen.
Wow. Hiking while white. That I think they're talking about adding a piece of legislation about that, actually. But I would love to have a kind of like a longer chat and interview with you, because you've done a lot of great content and videos, and I might react to some of it on the channel. But since you have limited time today, I thought we could get right into some of the stuff on Bill C-63. What do you think?
Sure. Absolutely.
Amazing. So as you have most likely heard, there has been Arif Irani has split the bill into two, likely because he doesn't think the human rights criminal code amendments will stick, and he's going to try to push through stuff that's just, this stuff is actually going to protect kids online, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, who knows why he's doing it? I would hope it's because the criminal code stuff and the human rights stuff isn't going to go through. I've actually talked about that a little bit on my channel. I mean, there's some crazy stuff in there. I'm sure people on your channel already know all about the pre-crime stuff, like the peace bonds and the house arrest for people who they think might commit a crime.
Right. Let's just make sure this works okay. You can still hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, this tweet was from Arif Irani the other day. Months of conservative filibustering have signaled progress on Bill C-63. Our kids can't wait any longer. Anyway, so there's part A of the bill, protects kids online, and there's part B. So today, while we have your expert lawyer opinion, I thought we'd go over part A, which Arif says all these part A's and 1.2, 1.3, but essentially it's part 1 and part 4 of the actual black and white legislation of Bill C-63. Is that's
Yeah.
what he said, right? That's pretty well accurate.
Yeah, that's what he's saying they're going to do. Now, they haven't actually done it yet. If I actually have just on my other screen here the Parliament website. I mean, they still. Yeah, he's right. C-63 is stalled. It's still stalled at second reading, which is probably good with some of the concerns I've seen. I mean, if they've only made it to second reading since February, I think it's probably unlikely that this would make it into law by November 2025. But yeah, It looks like, as you say, they're trying to. They're splitting it, hoping that they can get some of the other parties to agree to at least part of it and get that in.
Right. And it's been kind of scary, spooky, because some conservative freedom-minded voices have kind of softened a little bit and said, oh, well, he's throwing this, human rights stuff and amendments to the criminal code aside. So I guess we can all agree on just the part that's going to protect kids online. And while I have you here today, I thought we could try to answer that question. Is part A is there anything in here actually that's going to protect kids online? So it's kind of an exercise in sort of, instead of straw manning the argument, I thought we could steel man the argument and see if there's actually anything in here that does protect kids online. So should I just hop right into let's start with the actual description of the harms. Where is it here? I think I may have skipped over it. Yeah, sorry. Whoop. I don't envy you having to go through all this legislation all the time. It's really I'm not this is not my cup of tea, so it's quite agonizing.
I mean, I'll be honest. A lot of this legislation that the Liberal Party of Canada has come out with since 2015 is not my cup of tea to go through either, because the hallmark of their legislation, in my view, and just from my perspective as a lawyer, maybe some lawyers would say, well, it's just because you're a dumb criminal lawyer, not a real lawyer. The hallmark of it is that it's vague and word salady. So even as a lawyer reading through a lot of it, half the time, like, well, I don't know what they're saying or what they're actually going to do with this. And I think a lot of the same can be said here with when we say, is this actually going to protect children? Well, when we get through it a little bit, you'll see what they're doing is so vague, and what they're doing, a lot of it is, it's all, well, we're just putting this framework in place, and then regulations are going to give you the details, which regulations don't have to pass through Parliament. So it's very undemocratic and also non-transparent, because you just put through this law, and then bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats, can just add regulations behind the scenes as they see fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Here's a good example. There's a lot of examples of this, but in the purple, this is the Commission's mandate is to promote online safety in Canada, contribute to the reduction of harms caused to persons in Canada as a result of harmful content online by, among other things. And then one of them is facilitating the participation of Indigenous peoples of Canada and interested persons in the Commission's activities. In the purple here.
Right. Yeah. And what does that mean? I mean, as a law, well, it's not, that's a law. That's just saying that's the purpose or the mandate of the commission. So, okay, the mandate is that they apparently want to get individual people more involved, which, okay, that's fine. I don't know what, I guess what they'd be saying there is the reason that's going to benefit dangers to youth is if they're suggesting that Indigenous youth are at more risk of getting in trouble online. So they want to get their communities more engaged. I mean, that may or may not be the case. I do know that it is unfortunately a sad truth that Indigenous youth can tend to be a little bit more vulnerable, just owing to some of the difficulties that they have in a lot of the reserves, especially out west. I'm originally from Manitoba. I've been to some of the reserves in Manitoba, and some of them are, it's really not good living conditions. And there are, I mean, I don't think we want to get too much into the off topic on that. There's a lot of factors that go into that, but
sure. Another example here of how open-ended it is. And again, this is my non-lawyer assessment of this, but it says, and this is for the Digital Safety Commission, these unelected bureaucrats. This is this section of the bill. Requirements. When making regulations and issuing guidelines, codes of conduct, and other documents, the Commission must take into account freedom of expression, equality rights, privacy rights, the needs and perspectives of the Indigenous peoples of Canada, and any other factor that the Commission considers relevant. For example, what if the factor is the rise of racism or the rise of anti-Semitism? So the Commission must consider relevant factors like being consciously anti.
Yeah, absolutely. You've nailed it right there. And that's, it's, they have to consider, they get to tell themselves what they consider relevant. So it takes away any sort of oversight, because they end up being the ones who get to decide what's important, but the way that's worded there. And putting that in there gives them a nice out to really do whatever they want, because even though it has some nice terminology there at the beginning about having to take into account freedom of expression and equality rights, they can use sub E to just say, well, the rise of hate, for example, that's more important or more pressing than the freedom of expression. So although we've considered freedom of expression because we have to take that into account, we're taking these other factors, such as the ones that you've just listed as a couple of the favorite buzzwords that they like to use. They can then use this to say, well, see, we've done A to E, but we've determined that E has some more pressing concerns for us. Or I mean, also the equality rights, because unfortunately, I think if anyone who's read Animal Farm, there's the phrase, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. I mean, that's a phrase tailor-made for Canada in 2024, because you see some people in Canada are more equal than others. I think that's undeniable. I mean, I'd be called, a lot of people probably say, oh, that's racist to say that. I don't think it's racist. It's just that is a fact. Now, I think the argument is that right or not? Don't tell me that I'm a racist for noticing this. Tell me, just justify to me, is that a good thing that some people have different rights than others, which they can't. So that's why they resort to pejoratives like that.
Yeah, and I highlighted other stuff like this. This is under chairperson and vice chairperson. The chairperson may make rules respecting the commission's procedures and practices.
Yeah, well, and I'll just leave that up here because I think this is important. Notice we're on section 20 here, where it's talking about what the chairperson may do, or the chairperson's powers, duties, and functions. But we're at section 20, which for a law that's really short. Which I can tell you, like, there's nothing in the preceding 19 sections that actually tells us anything. Like, this is the first time we're hearing about what powers the commission has. It talks about things that they need to, what their purposes are, what their mandate is. It talks about the composition. So sections 12 to 17 is talking about who's in the commission. And then then you start getting into the chairperson, vice chairperson. This is where we get into this vagueness where, they make rules regarding the procedures. So there's nothing in this law saying what the procedures and practices are. That'll just be made up by the commissioner after this thing is established. They have to make the rules publicly available. That's good. And then section 21, you have there, the chairperson may authorize one or more members to exercise any of the commission's powers. So again, it's not delineating, who does what. It's just vesting it all in the chairperson. And again, it's just since the law up to this point has told us almost nothing about this commission, just what their mandate is, who's going to be in it, or like who's, it just says that it's 3 to 5 full-time members appointed by the governor and council, i.e. the prime minister. I mean, the governor and council, technically that's the governor general, but it's one of the problems with Canada is you have the legislative and executive branch are really combined into one, just through a historical anomaly of how our government has developed, since it's a constitutional monarchy, but the monarch has abdicated all responsibility and authority. So therefore, you have all the power in the prime minister.
Yeah. And sorry, were you going to say something else?
No, go ahead.
I was watching Arif Virani talk to some youth in his writing about Bill C-63, and he addressed one of the concerns of like, oh, is the Digital Safety Commission going to be biased? No, I'll tell you why it won't be biased, because none of the people are going to be me or Justin Trudeau. And it's like, well, it's going to be your friends though, or people that you appoint, which is the whole concern.
It will be people they appoint, because they say when it says appointed by the governor and council, what that means is the prime minister puts the list of people, gives it to the governor general saying, here's my quote unquote recommendation, unquote, your excellency. And then the governor general just rubber stamps it, because again, the way things have developed historically in our country, it's considered anathema for the governor general to actually exercise the power that on paper they have. I'm not going to get into the whole debate of whether democracy is good or not. Even if you assume democracy is the best thing since sliced bread, it would still be better if even the unelected governor general exercised some authority, because then there'd be at least somewhat of a check on the power of the prime minister, rather than the prime minister being able to draft the laws and then do these appointments. Because if we had a republic like the United States, the president would be fulfilling the role or holding the position that our governor general does. So then you'd have actually a different person, potentially someone from a different party, who is then deciding who these people will be. Yeah.
Well, let's get into the actual harms. I've gone over this a bunch of times, but you are a lawyer, you've practiced law, so this is the harmful content. that the Digital Safety Commission wants to remove from the internet. And I highlighted the top two. And I guess I should maybe highlight this one too. I guess my question is, are these things already illegal? A, intimate content communicated without consent. Let's go one at a time.
Yeah, they are. I mean, that sub A is already illegal under the Criminal Code of Canada. So part of the question is, why do they even need this commission when you should have the various police agencies already accepting complaints or looking into these things? Content that sexually victimizes a child or re-victimizes a survivor. Well, I don't know what they mean by re-victimizes a survivor, because if they mean by re-victimize, that doesn't exist in the criminal code, and I'm not sure what they mean by victimizing. Content that sexually victimizes a child, assuming that by victimize they mean similar things like the criminal. I don't have the code numbers off the top of my head, but there are offenses under the criminal code such as making sexually explicit material available to a minor. That could be victimizing a child, but that, it's more specific in the criminal code that making content available to a minor is a crime. Things like invitation to sexual touching, like if someone's inviting children to engage in certain sexual acts, like you hear about these things where they'll get into these chat rooms or various things with children and get them to turn on their video and do things that. If that's what they mean by victimizes, then that is already a crime under the criminal code. So there's a whole host of things under the criminal code that would cover off sections A and B, and also section F. Really, I mean, there's section F, content that incites violence. I mean, Canada has the hate crime laws that I've talked about a lot on my channel that I think are really thought crime laws. They say that it's inciting violence or hatred towards individuals. There's also things like inciting violence, like inciting a breach of the peace, or inciting a riot. Essentially, that would be inciting violence. That's already a crime. So I'm not sure. They're acting as if these things aren't already crimes and if they're not already being enforced. But I guess it's the same as their firearms laws, right? They say, oh well, people are getting killed, so as if murder isn't already illegal, we have to now make firearms illegal, because that will stop the criminals from using firearms. We'll take all the firearms away from the lawful owners, and that'll stop this. Similar, it seems like the way they're headed here could be something like, well, we're going to greatly restrict the liberty that people have to go on the internet in order to stop these crimes. Because right now, and the internet has been for decades kind of the Wild West, relatively speaking, right? It's been completely unregulated. And that's why the internet's a place where you can get access to, I mean, there's bad things you can get access to, but there's so much good stuff you can get access to that before the internet, you would have, I mean, even a channel like this, you wouldn't be able to get the type of content that you put out back before the internet, right? Because then it was all like, I've seen some of your videos that you've done, the kind of the funnier ones where you're pretending to be different members of the government or things like that. That would never see the light of day before the internet, because the only way you could get it out would be if some like CBC somehow agreed to put that on the television, which obviously they wouldn't. Whereas with the lack of regulation, without something like the CRTC, which I think that's what's coming after this. This is really most likely a stepping stone to eventually trying to regulate the internet the way television is regulated, where you need the CRTC to sign off on your channel.
Right. Do you know much about this Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act, in that regard? Because or even the Online News Act, because a lot of people kind of made that same analogy of like, we can't just have all this unregulated content on the internet, and kind of implying that the CRTC needs to step in and regulate everything that people are posting on the internet.
Yeah, I think that is not. I think that's a fair concern for people to have. I haven't looked at at C11 recently, but I know I did look at it, and when I was looking at it, that's the concern. The concern I've had, and the problem with that one is, unlike C-63, I mean, that one's made it all the way through. I mean, a while ago, back in 2023, it made it all the way through the Senate and the House of Commons.
Yeah, and part of the reason I started SaveFreeSpeech.ca is I noticed with these bills regarding the Canadian internet, it was tabled, it was going on for a while, and then always 10 business days before it goes into law, that's when the conservatives, that's when the opposition starts to talk about it, when it's just way too late to actually raise the awareness among the public. With one of the most, the internet is like one of the most crucial things now for civilized society, especially for one that believes in free speech and free discourse, because a lot of it happens online now.
Mm-hmm.
So let's we covered the online harms thing. I do want to go back to one thing you said though, which is because I think you kind of bring up a good point, or it's a phenomena that really I think is a huge red flag. You were saying sexually victimizes a child or re-victim. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean a chat room? Does that mean a service that provides illicit, illegal material? And it's a red flag to me because they say that they want to protect kids online. And why aren't they more specific? Why can't they go into like, this is a chat room, this is the rules here, this is the chat room there, or whatever it might be? It seems to be done so cynically and so kind of top down and just sort of like, listen, let's just give the power to the Digital Safety Commission. We'll make up the rules as we go. It's very cynically done.
Well, I mean, that's certainly a possibility. I suppose the flip side is they'd say, well, we need to give the commission the flexibility to deal with how quickly the internet evolves, which would not be totally unfair. But I think I would say that if they're really serious about this, why are they creating new laws and a new commission? Why not just give more resources to the RCMP or a mandate to the RCMP, tell them to start cracking down on this stuff and investigating it a lot more? Because as I said, they already have in place what they need to stop the things that they've listed as being harmful content. It's a matter of resources and priorities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a good thing to bring up here is Pornhub has been caught enabling human trafficking and also providing all sorts of inappropriate material. And they are headquartered in Montreal, Canada. I sent you a link before our chat. I'm wondering if you had a chance to like look into it, because there's more or less the owner of Pornhub, headquartered in Montreal, sort of has an existing relationship with the Canadian government, and they've been investigated before. Do you know much about this investigation?
I don't know much about it. It's something that I should probably look into more, because I did have a look at what you sent me, and yeah, it was interesting, but it's also frustrating because you read, okay, they did all these investigations, so where are the court cases? Where are the arrests and the charges? So again, that goes back to my comment of, look, if they're serious, if they actually want to protect kids, they've got the tools. Why don't they go after these people? I mean, I don't know why they're not going after these people. People, I guess that's a question a lot of people will be able to have to think about for themselves of, why wouldn't the government go hard after things like Pornhub? I mean, they're well within Canada's jurisdiction. You can't claim, oh, well, they're hiding in Switzerland or in some Caribbean island or something. They're in Canada. And, I keep coming back to certain things, like, now granted, Vice, that kind of left of center, I suppose they call themselves, media group, they did a lot of the legwork for the RCMP, but they still did expended incredible resources to track down the identity of this guy. I forget his real name. Dark Foreigner was his screen name. Who he made some pictures for this neo-Nazi group. Which, okay, I'm not saying it's good to be making content for a group like that, but he made some pictures for them, and you're going to hunt to the ends of the earth and expend millions of dollars of taxpayers' money and how many hours of RCMP officers' time to hunt down a meme maker when you've got people like Pornhub doing this stuff, or you've got people actually victimizing people that they choose not to go after.
Interesting. So you're saying they definitely, like our law enforcement definitely has the means to target and go after people when they find content online they don't like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now that was one guy. There's all kinds of other people making stuff for all kinds of different groups. They chose to go after that guy. And as I said, Vice did do a lot of the legwork for them, but that shows they have the ability. So again, rather than creating some new commission with a bunch of commissioners who are probably going to be pulling in, $250,000 a year salaries, put that money into RCMP's cybercrime units or local police forces to look into this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a different world, I could totally be on board with the Online Harms Act if it had stuff about we're going to hunt down the pedophiles, we're going to hunt down the child pornographers. You got Alex Jones talking about it at the podium. I'd be right there. I'd be like, yeah, let's pass this now. Let's hunt them down. Let's get them. But once again, it just seems to be very cynically the fact that they even just lump all this stuff together with content used to bully a child. Content.
Yeah, well, and I think F and G, that's the key right there. Content that incites violence and content that incites violent extremism or terrorism, because that's what I see them focusing on. That's what the police seem to be focusing on in terms of people getting charged for things. I mean, why am I as a defense lawyer getting calls from people saying like, hey, this CSIS agent keeps calling me wanting to talk to me about this hike I went on with my buddies. And then I have to call them to say, hey, like, look, my client's not going to talk to you. Please leave him alone. I mean, why are they even looking into that? And I think it goes back to the whole, why was it okay? I mean, really okay because people didn't get charged. I didn't see riot police or horse police going in to deal with all those Jews for Palestine who actually went inside and occupied the Parliament building recently and were blocking the Prime Minister's motorcade and that. They just backed out, like the RCMP guarding the Prime Minister backed out of that. So that they don't put down with violence, but the Freedom Convoy, which was a bunch I was there. I don't know if you were there. I was there. Bouncing castles, a dance party at the corner of what was it? The corner of Essex and Wellington, or that's what they send in the riot police for, but not people who are actually occupying the Parliament. So, I think you have to take these laws. Any law is only as good as how it's enforced, right? So on paper, there's things that are certainly not objectionable, as you said. If they're using this to say, hey, we're going to really go after the child pornographers and the human traffickers, and we're really going to drop the hammer on them, yeah, sign me up. But when I see on the ground who they're actually going after, and who do we hear them always talking about when they're talking about violent extremism in the media? Do you hear them talking about, oh, we're really concerned that there's a increase in jihadism or things like that? Or do we hear them always talking about, oh, we're concerned about these, white nationalist extremists and what have you? That seems what they're always talking about. And I don't see a lot of evidence that that's actually a problem in Canada, unless you take, a definition of white nationalism that's so broad as to encompass anyone who just doesn't hate Canada's entire heritage and culture and history.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask about the sort of takedown stuff, because I was reading it last night. It says duty to make certain content inaccessible. And does this apply to all of the harmful content, or is it just the content that sexually victimizes a child or re-victimizes a survivor, or the revenge porn stuff?
The way this is worded is it's specifying in this section that it's content that sexually victimizes a child or re-victimizes a survivor. So this particular section doesn't leave it open to use anything else. It's zeroing right in in that first subsection that that's the only content that this particular section applies to.
Okay.
And so, yeah, they have to make the content inadmissible to persons in Canada, which, yeah, I would hope they would. It should. I mean, the sad part is it shouldn't take a law for content providers to take that down and make it inaccessible to people. But
Right.
I mean, I guess that's the dark side of the internet being the Wild West, and
Well,
there's people out there all they want is money or notoriety, and they don't care, so they're just going to let anything go.
and what I feel kind of silly about it, like obviously that content shouldn't be online if it's child porn, but the bill is like, yeah, we're gonna take it down in Canada, inaccessible in Canada. So it's like, okay, so if I had a VPN, I could still get it in Canada, could I not? Like, it's still it's still accessible globally.
Well, potentially, although, I mean, in fairness, the Canadian government doesn't have the ability to legislate anything outside its own borders. So I mean, the VPN is a way around that. But in fairness, the government, they only have the ability to order people to.
And that's totally fine. I just feel like all the legislation I've seen about the internet from this liberal government fundamentally doesn't really get how the internet works. You know what I mean? Like it's all just kind of done cynically as like, yeah, we'll stop people in Canada from being able to access to it. But I guess the perfect example too of how naive it feels is they're like, we want you to create tools to block users. And it's like that already exists on pretty well most big tech platforms. We want to have tools where you can flag harmful content. And it's like, I'm pretty sure that's something that already exists.
Yeah, I think it does already exist. So yeah, some of it does feel like this is making legislation just so they can say we're doing something.
Yeah.
And it just keeps coming back to like, well, look, if you really want to do something, the criminal code stuff is already there. Get the police involved. But I think the problem is, again, speaking of the cynicism, it's a lot cheaper and easier to pass a piece of legislation and then be able to go on TV and say, hey, look, we've taken these steps. It's a lot harder to actually put that funding in place, especially when we're doing stuff like funding refugee claimants to the tune of over $80,000 a year to stay in a hotel 365 days a year and have $85 worth of room service per person per day. And they're not willing to say, hey, you know what? Maybe, it just shows where their priorities really are, right? Like they'll talk in front of the TV that our priorities are stopping the harm to children. I would say if your priorities are really there, then literally put your money where your mouth is. Say, you know what? We actually don't have these millions of dollars for refugee claimants. I mean, we're sorry that you come from a terrible country and that things are really bad there and you're in danger, but we just don't have the money to pay for your room and board. We don't have the money to pay for anyone else's room and board, like our own citizens who've paid taxes and lived here their whole lives. They don't get that. So we really can't justify, as bad as we feel for you and for your situation, we can't justify, we need that money to stop children being horribly victimized and trafficked online. That's just one example. There's all kinds of things that they spend insane amounts of money on that I think, but those are their real priorities. You look at where the money is. The money is going into things like, paying all these obscene amounts of money for refugees to have a hotel and free food, paying obscene amounts of money for pushing all this LGBT stuff and the library readings and all that kind of stuff. These people wouldn't be able to do that if they didn't have government money propping them up. We could list all kinds of things, but at the end of the day, follow the money. That's where the priorities really are. And this stuff feels a bit like window dressing if they're not backing it up with the money. And as I said, that's all they need to do. They don't really have to pass new laws. They could just give the funding and the resources to law enforcement and tell law enforcement, this is what we want you to prioritize. Maybe don't focus so much on the guys going for hikes or, like active clubs is a big thing that they're really focusing on lately. I don't know if you've heard of those. They're from what I've been told. Again, it's like guys. It's like men, usually white men, like European heritage, getting together to. I guess they practice martial arts. They go for hikes. They do stuff like that. Like maybe say like, you know what, we're not actually so scared about those people overthrowing the government because there's barely any of them, and all they're really doing is just hanging out together for a bit once a week. Let's focus on the predators online.
Yeah. So speaking of money, they want to hand out very big fines to big tech operators. Have you looked into this section of the bill?
Well, I've had a look at it. So here's the thing to keep in mind about these. So these are a fine of not more than 8% of the operator's gross revenue. So what they're saying is this is the maximum that they could fine any of these individuals. So the principle when it comes to sentencing under any criminal code or any other statute is the maximum is reserved for the worst offender in the worst set of circumstances. So in a criminal perspective, the worst offender would be someone who has a terrible record. They've done this, dozens of times. That they're before the court. It is the 5th time they're getting brought up on the same charges, or the 10th time, or the 20th time. They have just nothing sympathetic about them. They've never done anything to try and fix themselves. They have absolutely no remorse. You get the idea. And then the worst set of circumstances would be, the worst possible iteration of that crime. So, if, say, for example, just picking a random crime off the top of my head, a crime like fleeing from police. If the police are trying to pull you over and you flee from them. So the worst offender would be someone who's done this multiple times before. They have a terrible driving record. They didn't even have a license at the time. And then the worst circumstance would be, well, not only did they flee from police, it was extreme high speed. They drove over a child while they were fleeing from the police. And, they ended up like destroying a bunch of property and all that. And then when they were finally caught, they had a shootout with the police. So that's like the worst possible set of circumstances you could think of. So that's where you're going to finally get the maximum. And the maximums are almost never handed out. They're very rarely handed down the absolute maximum. So, yeah, that stuff sounds like a really heavy hit, but the only operator, to use their term, that would be getting 8% of their gross global revenue or $25 million, the only ones that would be getting that are ones who are like serial offenders for not following up with this stuff, and it's a really bad set of circumstances. But also, again, it goes back to, okay, yeah, this is the law, but are they going to back up this law with action? Are they actually going to go after these operators? Are they actually going to investigate and prosecute these people?
Right. So, well, what I'm curious about is what triggers an event like this, and there's different. Anyone who commits an offense under subsection 1 is liable of this, and every operator that commits an offense under subsection 1 is liable of this. Like there's different penalties for different things. And I'm trying to kind of parse it out here.
Right. Well, that one refers back to,
like it says every operator commits an offense that contravenes an order of the commission. What does that, what does that mean?
Well, I imagine it would be something comparable to a court order. So, if the commission, I know that, for example, section 91 sub 1 is referenced in there as well. And that's one where an inspector can, for verifying compliance or preventing non-compliance with that, may enter any place that they have reasonable grounds to believe that there's any document. So disobeying an order of the commission would be if you don't let their inspector into your facility to have a look at your servers or what. I mean, I guess it wouldn't be physically entering their facility. It might be remotely accessing it. So that would be one example. Or if the commission said, hey, you need to shut down this portion of your site, you need to stop, letting some of this content be available. So someone who I could see actually getting prosecuted under this would be something like what is it, Gab, which is the really, where they publicize themselves as the no holds barred free speech version of Twitter. I could see them going after Gab by saying, well, hey, you've got this quote unquote anti-Semitic or quote unquote hateful content on your site. You need to shut that down. Otherwise, we're going to fine you. And then if he doesn't take it down, then they'll get hit with the fines. I feel like, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but just looking at past conduct and looking at the sorts of things that seem to be getting prosecuted, I feel like it's things like Gab that they're really gunning for, not things like Pornhub. Because have you heard of anyone from Pornhub getting arrested? Whereas the owner of Gab and the owner of Telegram just got arrested not too long ago. Now, that wasn't Canada, but same, it was another NATO country, another G7 country, they're all kind of similar mindset.
Right. So when my concern, and let me know if this is hyperbolic, Canadian government, what would then happen to Facebook? Would they not get knocked on the door by the Digital Safety Commission, and it's like, if you don't take this content down, we're going to fine you? Like, is that what it looks like?
Yeah, that seems to be what this. Yeah, I think that's accurate. That it seems that they could use this as a way to force things like Facebook and X, formerly Twitter, and whatnot, Telegram, Gab, to force them to enforce the Canadian government's view of things. Especially, again, like, we look at what is considered hate, and you can see these cases, and especially you look at the cases where people really get hit hard, right? Like 400 Christian churches have burnt down and not a single arrest has been made. But if but then that lady who ran the coffee shop at the Jewish hospital in Montreal during the big pro-Gaza protest there, she threw a Nazi salute up, and now they're having a complete meltdown over that. I don't know if that one was actually arrested or not, but I haven't followed up on that one. But you can see, like, that's when churches burn down, the Prime Minister says, well, it's understandable why people would be upset and would do that. But when someone does a hand gesture in the midst of a protest, well, that's totally reprehensible, and we need to come down on that. So I don't think you're being hyperbolic. I think that the ingredients for that are in there, and it's under the auspices of, we want to stop child pornography, which would be fantastic. I would love to see them actually doing that and handing out orders to these big tech companies saying, like, you need to take that stuff down, or we're hammering you with millions of dollars of fines. But will that occur? I guess we'll just have to. We'll have to see if this even makes it into law before November. I mean, we're now less than a year away from the next election, maybe even sooner. But just seeing the way things have gone, I suspect that the NDP will continue to come up with excuses of why they need to prop the government up. But at least we know it won't be any longer than November of next year. I say at least, for whatever that's worth. I went on a big rant on my own live stream last week about why I don't think the Conservative Party of Canada is going to be any big saviors and really change a whole lot. But they probably won't resurrect this bill.
Right. I mean, well, they have their own version of wanting to stop online harassment. They have their own version of wanting to police the internet. But I know you have
to just before me interject there, keep in mind the Conservative Party of Canada, they voted unanimously, along with the rest of the Parliament, in favor of the conversion therapy bill, which C4 is so broadly worded that you could technically be charged with conversion therapy for having a private conversation with your child who's struggling with their sexual identity, and having a faith-based conversation with them. Or I think if someone ratted out their priest of, hey, he gave me this advice in the confessional, that they could run afoul of that. And that Conservative Party of Canada voted unanimously in favor of that, along with everyone else in Parliament. And the Conservatives also, by way of private members bill, brought us the Holocaust it's not even denial bill. I mean, it is a crime under that law to deny the Holocaust, but it's also a crime to downplay it in any way. And then it's so broadly worded that I don't even know what that means. Because, like, does that mean you're a criminal if you question even one story that someone said? Like, for example, I'm not saying I deny this or not because I don't want to go to jail, but for example, the people being made into soap or human lampshades. I mean, that's been debunked by mainstream historians, but
it happened. Can't question it.
I don't know. Did that happen? Like, are you allowed to wonder whether that happened or not? It's so unclear in that law whether you can or not. So
you can't question it. There's electricity on the floors, wooden doors. It's all real. But I wanted to ask about because I know we have to go soon. Yeah. When it comes to Bill C-63, like, there's already evidence that this Liberal government sucks at writing legislation and it hurts the Canadian internet. The best example is the Online News Act, which now we cannot access news on certain social media platforms. And in my estimation, this is big tech calling the bluff of Ottawa bureaucrats and saying, like, yeah, actually your bill sucks and we're not going to expose ourselves to this financial leeching from this government. We're only a 40 million population. And I guess my suspicion is, and kind of like what I might use to try to popularize how outrageous this bill is could this bill not expose big tech platforms to a disproportionate amount of financial risk by operating in Canada?
Well, in theory it could, but again, it comes down to how are they going to apply this? But you're right. I mean, big tech could do the same thing they did with the news stuff and say, you know what, we're just not taking the risk because the way you've written this law, it's not clear to us what you're saying is not allowed. So we're just going to block users from Canada from using our platform. That's possible. I don't know if they'll actually do that or not, but that's the problem with legislation that is not very precisely worded, because then people don't know what's illegal and they might just decide, I don't want to take the risk of getting a bunch of fines, and so we're just gonna
because I mean you do the math, and sure, these are like maximum charges, but let's say it's there's a slew of penalties that one big tech platform gets throughout the year. Like the potential liabilities, even out in a conservative estimate, could be like hundreds of millions of dollars of liability unless you do what the Canadian government wants. And you might say, oh, well, or the Ottawa bureaucrat would say, no, but we're going to work with the big tech platforms. Well, from the big tech platform standpoint, they're like, so you want us to spend a bunch of resources talking to your bureaucrats to make sure that your version of what is harmful is okay, specifically in Canada. Like, that's going to cost us a bunch of money and resources to apply to the Canadian internet. You guys are 1/5 of Brazil, 1/5 of Indonesia. You're half of a Germany. You're only one California. Like, you know what? I think it's actually going to be easier for us and more profitable for us to just shut down Facebook and Meta completely in Canada. Sayonara. Is that a possibility?
It's a possibility. I mean, I can't say how likely that is because that all comes down to their internal calculus. But I think we can say it is a possibility just because we've seen how.
Oh, you cut out. Are you there? Whoops. I can't hear you. Is that me? No, I think that's on your end. What happened there? We can't hear you. Something cut out. Uh-oh. CSIS is messing with your soundboard, I guess. No, I can't hear you. Hello? Well, hopefully we'll get Nicholas's mic back working again. Let's go into the chat for a second. What are you guys talking about in here? Lampshade deniers straight to jail, says EdgyD TV. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks Conservative Party for tabling that bill. Thanks for the Liberal Party for putting it into their they got it through in the budget. the Holocaust denial bill. But yeah, any luck over there, Nicholas? No. I could try getting you to. If I don't know what mic you have, but sometimes unplugging it then replugging it in can work. I don't know if it's a USB microphone or what. Shoot, this is too bad. Give him a few more minutes here. Hello? Nah, it's doesn't seem to be working. Do you have to go anyway? Should we call it a wrap? Okay. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for coming on the show. Sorry that we can't hear you right now. There you go. Government taking away our speech, shutting down our microphones. Really appreciate your work. Everybody go subscribe to his channel right now. Don't Talk TV. It's actually in the mods, put it in chat, but it also should be in the description. Thanks again for joining us, and maybe we'll talk soon. I would love to have another sit down with you because you really know your stuff when it comes to Canadian law. So thanks so much for joining us. Thank you. Have a good one. Oh man, that's too bad his mic cut out, but that was great. That was a lot of good fun. It's gonna nuke the Canadian internet. We need to get rid of Bill C-63. I don't know. I think I want to drive that point home. I think I want to try to get the attention of Elon Musk with that one and say, hey, talk about this bill, Elon. If you don't talk about this bill, there's going to be Canadian bureaucrats in your inbox asking for millions of dollars of your money because somebody posted a meme that's mean to Indian immigrants. You know, but yeah, I think we're gonna hang out for a little bit longer here. Maybe we'll actually go react to one of Wansbutter's videos because yeah, I wish I had more time to chat with him. Just give me a second here. Do. All right. Don't Talk TV. This is him. Videos. I think it's one of the first episodes he said is all about the hate speech laws. 71. Is it this one? Don't Talk TV. I thought you said it's episode 6. I thought this was the one about hate crimes. Oh, could it be this one? 16? Maybe it's this one. Yeah, I think we might give this a watch.
Section 2B of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the freedom of...
Okay, yeah, hate propaganda. Yeah, this might be it. This might be the one. Oh, you can't even see my face right now. There we go. Caesar with $10. Thank you for the donation, sir. Christmas tree reveal when? Yeah. Once we get some more super chats, we'll do a Christmas tree reveal. But hey, if you like what I'm doing here, you want to support my work, we're doing a lot of work on the documentary right now for Save Free Speech to expose the corrupt managerial class in Canada. If you want to support that, you can go to givesendgo.com/SaveFreeSpeech. Yeah, we interviewed some big names, working on a new sort of teaser fundraiser video. Look at these donations. Alan Cunningham with the $100 from yesterday. Thank you, Alan. He says, let's make this campaign a success. Any leftover funds can be used to kick JT and his thugs to the curb. Let's freaking go. Let's freaking go. So well said. So well said. Anonymous giver with $20. Great work, Greg. Thank you. Thank you. Ann Urquhart, $45. Big donation. Oh, Allah, show me the reality of all things as it really is. Totally true. Totally true. And this was huge. This guy is the man, the one and only Michael the Conqueror. I think he's our biggest donor right now. He's basically sponsoring the documentary at this point. $1,111. Guys, 07s for Michael the Conqueror in chat. 07s for Michael the Conqueror in chat. He is making the documentary happen. And it's very exciting. Like, I've had to pay for hard drives, had to pay for the gas, had to pay for, the editors and the camera operators. We're working with an award-winning documentarian as well. So it's good stuff. It's good stuff. I actually just went through the shot list yesterday of the entire like script of like, we need a shot of this, shot of this, shot of this, shot of this, shot of this. It's it's going to be a legit documentary. It's going to be distributed on Amazon Prime Video. It's going to be distributed internationally. If we get our highest budgeting goal, it'll be submitted to film festivals and everything. And, the whole reason I'm doing this is because I've been in the, political arena in the right wing for a while. And respectfully, like, I don't see that many solutions. Like, I see the globalist Conservative Party of Canada. I see these like lying career politicians. And outside of that, I don't really see that much. I don't really see much going on. Of course, my whole journey started with the People's Party of Canada, and that's fantastic. And they're doing what they can to create a platform for people. I think they could be, better. I think they could be more aggressive. I think they could put a lot more thought into more powerful messaging and rhetoric to really capture the frustration of Canadians right now, because the let's face it, the anti-immigrant sentiment is really strong. The PPC has the policy to address that, but it's like the rhetoric is just simply not strong enough. But anyway, my point is, I see these other kind of alternative media outlets, and they sort of just prop up the PPC, the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre. And so it's like, what are we, what like actual solutions are there out there to like fight this battle in the fifth generational warfare? And I'm a media guy. So I'm like, you know what? We need more media. We need more people telling our side of the story. And it needs to be well done. It needs to be professional. It needs to be easy to understand. We need to be educating people on a regular basis about this stuff. And that's why I'm super pumped about this documentary, because it's going to tell a very, very, very important story, which is, in a nutshell, identifying the enemy. Identifying the enemy. Because, getting Trudeau out, I should bring up the example, but getting Trudeau out, can I find it quickly? It's just so annoying when I'm cooking and then I want to like talk about something to like reference it, and then I have to like go look for it. You know what I mean? How far back is it? When do I talk about it? No, I made a tweet about it not too long ago. I should be able to find it. There we go. Boom. Can a Poilievre supporter explain to me how getting Trudeau out would fix this problem? And what happened? The Mayor McQuaker of Emo was fined $5,000 for refusing to acknowledge Pride Month and subsequently refused to pay the fine. Then he had his bank account garnished. I didn't even know you could do this. But essentially, against his will, they showed up, just took the money out of his account. They took the money out of his account. So, did Trudeau do this? Did the federal Liberal Party do this? No. And that's why I say there's clearly bureaucrats and members of Canada's managerial class across the country imposing their ultra-progressive politics on mayors, on people. And in the documentary, we document other stories of regular Canadians, teachers, lawyers, professors, patriots, parents, you name it, high school students, and how they're persecuted for their beliefs, for basically in some cases just who they are and what they believe in. Obviously, we bring up the convoy in the documentary, but we tell that whole story and identify that enemy of there's this very biased managerial class in Canada. And there's also an organization called the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which sort of represents this sort of how these people operate, which is to smear the reputations of people who have the wrong politics. And it's done in a very systemic and very intentional and very insidious way. And people need to know about this simply so we can identify the enemy. We can't solve a problem if we don't really know what the problem is. Because right now everyone's running around saying, that's woke, we got to stop the woke. And actually there was a reply to this that's perfect. There's a reply to this tweet. Wait, was it this tweet? Well, the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal is a provincial creation enforcing provincial legislation. It has nothing to do with federal politics. If you want to get rid of it, look closer to home. Well, this is exactly right. It has nothing to do with Trudeau. That was in the tweet, though. What was I going to... yeah, here we go. Here we go. This guy says, easy. Get rid of the head asshole in charge. Get rid of the left-wing mind virus. End the wokeness. Yeah, it's that simple, right? Just get Trudeau out and get rid of the left-wing mind virus. It's not that simple, guys. It's not that simple at all. It's like, this is, you know what this is? This is a Death Star. This is a Star Wars Death Star thinking. And I remember identifying this back in 2020. Essentially what it is, it's this mindset that, you know the movie Star Wars, A New Hope. It's the climax of the movie. They're in their X-Wing fighters and they got to go fly down into the trench of the Death Star and then shoot one missile in the little, hole in the Death Star, and then the whole thing explodes, and then blow up this kid, then let's go home. And then there's like Princess Leia with the buns on her head, and then we all live happily ever after. That's what this thinking is. All we got to do is get Trudeau out, shoot that little missile into the Death Star, and the whole thing explodes. This is delusional thinking. This is not a movie. We're not in a movie. We're in reality. So that's just like that. That's not how, it's not a simple fix to everything that's going on. And I remember identifying this phenomena back in 2020 when this person named Norman Traversy, you guys remember Norman Traversy? He said, I'm going to arrest Justin Trudeau. I have a PDF paper from a lawyer. I'm going to submit it to the U.S. Embassy. And then Donald Trump is going to arrest Justin Trudeau for like being a pedophile or something. He got over $100,000 in funding for his GoFundMe to print out a PDF and then put the PDF into a mail slot at the U.S. Embassy. No one even came to see him when he submitted the papers. So it's like literally like a Death Star where like instead of shooting a missile in the hole of the Death Star, you shoot in a PDF into the hole of the U.S. Embassy, and then the whole, and then Justin Trudeau gets thrown in jail. If you could believe it, it didn't work. It didn't work. Nothing happened. Nothing happened at all. And same thing with, it's very similar with, all we got to do is get Trudeau out and all of our problems will go away. But stories like this show us that this is not the case. This has nothing to do with Justin Trudeau. This has nothing to do with the powers that he has. There is a managerial class of people with similar politics, pushing the same politics. And it's not even about pushing the politics. It's about punishing people with the wrong politics. And it's always done in an above board way. Like, listen to like the audacity of the people that did this. Sure, sex is great, but have you ever garnished your mayor's bank account after he publicly refused to comply with the tribunal's order to pay damages? That's like they're so emboldened. They're like, yeah, we took $5,000 from this mayor's bank account because we don't like his politics because he didn't recognize Pride Month or recognize some flag or whatever. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, that's why this documentary is important. It's going to start exposing the problem. And creating solutions in this place. I want to start creating, and the solution is, a documentary that's going to tell our side of the story. It's actually going to tell it properly. It's going to expose this managerial class, and then give us, the moral high ground. Oh my God, look at this. James Bullock with a $150 donation. Thank you so much for this huge donation. $150. Keep up the great work. Infinite respect. Infinite respect. Wow. I'm going to take that to the bank. I'm going to take that to the bank. You hear that? You hear that? I got infinite respect. Thank you so much for the huge donation, James. Really, really appreciate it. I'm hopefully going to come out with more sort of fundraiser stuff to really hype it up and try to do a Christmas drive here because, there's a lot of stuff to pay for this project, and I think it's going to be well worth it. So Lee Stewie in chat says, Borderland Pride leader says he will go after anyone who opposes LGBT where applicable because he's a lawyer. Yeah, these people they're aggressively enforcing their politics on people through like punishment and through all sorts of things. And really, like, what is the pushback? Let's meditate on that for a second. What is the pushback against these emboldened gay lawyers who are going after mayors and taking their money? Because it comes back to the Conservative Party of Canada, the Polyev, the official opposition, and they hardly stand up for any of us, I think, ever. Didn't even stand up for Tamara Litch or Chris Barber. Didn't even stand up for Artur Pawlowski. Didn't even stand up for, the closest thing he did to that was like taking a photo op with James Topp, which was honestly more gross than anything else because he was there for 2 seconds, then ran away, and then never spoke of it again. This is a Canadian Armed Forces veteran who marched across the entire country with a 50-pound rucksack on his back to stop vaccine mandates in the military. Shows up for 2 seconds for a photo op to pander to people like us, then fucking disappears. He's not like Trudeau, though. He's not like a regular-ass career politician. He's actually exactly that. But yeah. Oh, yeah, we were going to react to this. That's right. That's right. Let's react to a Wansbutter video. Let's go. How do I fix this? Do this? No, let me fix this. Hold on. That doesn't look right. Just a moment. Is that better? There we go. All right, let's react to that. Hate crimes in Canada. I'm excited. Go subscribe to Nicholas Wansbutter, his channel, Don't Talk TV. Lee Stewie says, imagine if C-63 passes and you have people like Borderland Pride at the helm filing lawsuits with the Human Rights Commission. Yeah, that's kind of why I do see Arif Virani splitting up this bill at least as like a small win. I think I may have sent the wrong message on my initial like TikTok about this, of how it's like, hey, this is good news. It's good news as in that they're going to put that on the back burner for now. The thing of, it looks like they're going to put that on the back burner of changing the human rights stuff and trying to broaden the definition of criminal hate speech. However, it's also bad news because they're shifting their tactic to try and get one past the goalie, and a digital commission. It's going to be a censorship bureaucracy. Based on what we've seen with this government, it's going to be a censorship bureaucracy. And I think I'm just thinking out loud here. That's another sort of reason why I'm excited about this documentary. I don't really feel like many people properly identify the problem. Because if you go to alternative media, if you go to the Rebel Newses of the world and the True Norths of the world, and even the other kind of like YouTube influencers of the world in Canadian politics, all of the problems are reduced to Justin Trudeau, or even just like the Liberal Party. When in reality, there's a whole class of bureaucrats who fall in line with being subservient to the corrupt government, the corrupt regime that they all work for. And very rarely do I see anyone kind of properly identifying the enemy, properly identifying like the villain of the story. So, yeah, we need to start doing that, because otherwise we're just kind of running around with our head cut off. All right, let's get into reacting to this video, and then I'm probably gonna wrap it up because I got work to do, guys. I got work to do. Okay, so this is Nicholas Wansbutter. Sorry, Don't Talk TV, episode 16, Hate Crimes in Canada. Whoops, hold on, let me fix the audio.
Section 2B of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the freedom of thought, belief, and expression. However, this right is not unlimited, and as we've discussed previously, Section 1 of the Charter allows for reasonable limitations on the rights provided in other sections of the Charter. One of those limits on the right to freedom of expression and thought comes from the so-called hate propaganda provisions of the Criminal Code of Canada. This week on Don't Talk TV, I'm going to look at those sections of the Criminal Code in light of some recent events in the news.
This is not legal advice.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a criminal defense lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. Now, the question of hate crimes and hate propaganda has come up in the news recently. Two items in particular caught my attention. One, a gentleman named...
Let's just check the time. So that's February 17th, 2021. This was the February before the convoy. Canadian Nationalist Party leader charged with willful promotion of hate. So this, for those who don't know, this is a hate speech law that's already on the books, and it's enforced and used very rarely. So he's going to kind of go over, I think, one of the times it has been used.
Travis Patron, not exactly sure how to pronounce his name, who's apparently the leader of the Nationalist Party of Canada, was arrested and charged with promotion of genocide under Section 318 of the Criminal Code and willful promotion of hatred under Section 319 of the Criminal Code. This was in relation to a YouTube video that he had posted some years ago, and which the Canadian Anti-Hate Network had brought to the attention of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The second...
Oh, there you go. Canadian Anti-Hate Network bringing something to the attention of the RCMP. Huh. Where have we seen that before? Interesting. Starting to see a network start to arise here.
Item is from February the 22nd, where an article asked why a pub in downtown London called the Ale House hadn't been charged with willfully promoting hatred for a sign that they posted on their building that said, "We love Chinese people, but we hate the genocide and the Chinese virus that your communist government has inflicted on us." Now, it's important...
Okay, whoa, that throwback, I forgot about this. Based sign? We love Chinese people. We hate the genocide and China virus your commie government has inflicted upon us. I mean, what's wrong with that? That's I love the COVID angst coming out of that. You know what I mean? Austin S. says, Pat King could be any of us, and look how easy we be forgotten about. I don't even like Pat King, but he shouldn't be in jail. No, this is totally true. This is totally real. And I don't understand why more people don't get that. You know, these are the canaries in the coal mine. Like, we saw it since the convoy, where people like Jeremy McKenzie, Morgan May, people like Artur Pawlowski, people like Henry Hildebrandt, people like, Pat King. They all, did I mention old Randy Hillier as well? Like, these people were made an example of for being leaders or being, you know, representative of a certain politics of opposing the Canadian government, and they got punished for it. And the thing is when people get thrown in jail or persecuted, like, you know, life moves on, unfortunately. And unless there's people who are telling that story, then it's going to be forgotten about. It's going to be forgotten about. And people are just going to move on. And it's sad, but that's what happens. And it sucks because there's so many people who are further left or further to the center, or maybe they're right wing and they agree with all these people like Pat King who have been thrown in jail. But I don't want to associate with that. I don't want to say that. I don't. It's too risky for me to stand up and defend them and tell their story. And it's like, okay, well, now no one is, you know. And now the fact that happened, the fact that was so morally wrong and morally bad, and exposed the corruption of the government you live under. Now no one's going to hear about any of that. Now that's just not going to be talked about at all. And then the government's going to do it again. And they're going to do it to somebody who's closer to you. They're going to keep coming in from the far right, and they're going to move their way in. And that's why it's always disgusting when anyone like to the left of me is like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to associate with that. And it's just like, bro, you're next in line. Are you stupid? Like, just like look at what's happened in history. When there's a rise of a tyrannical government, they start at the most sort of like the strongest dissidents who are the most dissenting against the ruling government. They go after them first, persecute them, make an example of them, try to create laws around it or whatever, just to usurp their power and, you know, discredit everyone who agrees with that dissident, whatever. And then they move in from there. And it's really sad because there's a lot of I mean, it's not sad. It's just kind of like the situation we're in Canada. There's a lot of infighting right now, which I'm kind of okay with. But I think some infighting is good and some infighting is bad. And I might kind of make a video or share some thoughts on it to kind of parse out my thoughts on that. But I mean, in a nutshell, maybe I'll just talk about it now. There's a lot of demoralized people in the right wing of Canada or the freedom movement or whatever you want to call it. And they saw what happened during the convoy. They saw how corrupt our government is, and they don't see solutions, probably because there aren't many good ones. And so they get demoralized. And I've been there. You know, I've been there. I've totally felt that way before. It's totally hopeless. It's so over. And I think the solution is to, first of all, address the fact that you're demoralized and try to remoralize yourself any way that you can by working on yourself. That's always a good first step. You know, trying to take care of your immediate family or friends or anyone who's around you, your immediate homestead or home or living situation or financial situation. That's always a good place to start. But outside of that, it's important to be grounded in reality of what is possible. We should have a sort of idealist, kind of like radical imagination in terms of what is possible. But there's also something where it's like, okay, well, what's realistic to do right now? What can we do right now? How am I going to reach that long-term ideal goal? And everything I'm talking about is like solutions oriented. That's the healthy thing. Take care of yourself, then assess the situation, aspire for something great that will turn this country around, but also look at the immediate environment and ask yourself, what can I actually do to, you know, progress towards the goal that I want? That's the healthy thing to do. People are not doing that. There's a lot of right-wing people who are not doing that. Maybe they're overwhelmed with demoralization. They're overwhelmed with fear, and they think that the time is out. It's already too late. And then they let sort of, I don't know, resentment and fear take over, and it turns into this sort of nasty thing, and they just start kind of tearing down everyone around. They just start to like shit on everything. They start to shit on the PPC, for example. They start to shit on Diagolon or Jeremy McKenzie or myself or anyone who's actually trying to do something. And it's very, and you know, to be fair, people like might between Diagolon and PPC, and they might be fighting back and forth and that sort of thing. And this is what I mean. Sometimes it's productive in fighting and it's constructive criticism, or it's like pushing the person to be more aggressive or more, you know, more strong and brave with their rhetoric. But on the flip side, sometimes it's just kind of nasty and destructive and unproductive, and sort of like it just feels like the person is trying to tear something else down because it feels good in the moment. You know what I said about you're aspiring for a positive goal to try and, turn the country around, but you also have to look at the reality. These people are not having any sort of aspiration for the future. They're like, it's totally over. There is no future. So what can I do with the immediate power I have right now? I'm going to go shit on that person right there. I have the power. I have the ability to go shit on that person, and it's going to feel good. It's going to feel good to just throw a brick through that window, because fuck that. It's over anyway, bro. That's what's unproductive. That's what kind of needs to stop. I think the infighting can be good. I want to host more debates, to be honest, because I've gotten a lot of great feedback from that debate between the Ferryman's Toll and Alex Cargill, aka Transplendor, and I would like to do more debates on those topics, because let's face it, there aren't really much debates going on in Canada, period. There's not going to be a debate on the CBC. There's not going to be a debate on CTV News or City TV. There's not even going to be a debate with the Conservative Party of Canada. They are very much, nope, like no discussion. If you become a member, you're not even allowed to, like, you have to write all this stuff to sign your life away to, like, not talk about stuff. So there's no debate happening there either. Where's the debate happening? It's like, quite frankly, the debate is happening online between, PPC people, Diagolon people, whatever it is. Maybe a little bickering with kind of the conservative gatekeepers, but most of the time they just try to prop up the Conservative Party. But like, there's a lot of very pressing issues going on, and like, we're not really talking about it or parsing it out whatsoever. So, D's in chat if you want more debates. Let me see those D's. But that's pretty well my rant. We gotta keep things productive. I think, like I said, infighting and disagreement, I think, can be very healthy. Even if it gets heated, even like I can see if it gets like sometimes a little nasty, or people kind of like, mock each other a bit and ridicule each other a bit, because that's how you can get your point across. But aside from that, when it's just kind of like nasty with no real point, that kind of stuff, I think is just, when I see that stuff, I think it's just honestly depressing, because it's like people are just demoralized, and this is like the epitome of losing. The epitome of losing is, getting crushed by the globalist, astroturfed Conservative Party, and then any amount of resistance is just bickering and fighting amongst each other with no sort of sign that it's going to manifest into anything productive. I think conflicts are good, but it needs to turn into something positive. Yes, look at the D's in chat. Let's freaking go. Let's continue to react to this.
A pub in downtown London called the Ale House hadn't been charged with willfully promoting hatred for a sign that they posted on their building that said, "We love Chinese people, but we hate the genocide and the Chinese virus that your communist government has inflicted on us." Now, it's important for Canadians to understand the hate propaganda laws, firstly, so that you understand both your rights and your obligations for public discourse in Canadian society, and also to give some insight into why these charges are so rarely laid. So in this episode, firstly, I'll cover what is laid out in sections 318 and 319 of the Criminal Code, and to explain what is required to prove charges under those sections. Then I'll look specifically at how those sections of the Criminal Code might apply against the video in question posted by Mr. Patron or Patron. And finally, I'll look at how those sections may or may not apply to the Ale House in London, Ontario.
Amazing. This is stuff we've covered on the channel before, but I'm excited to hear what my rights are in regards to hating things, and what I'm allowed to hate and what I'm not allowed to hate, and what I'm allowed to say and not allowed to say. Yeah.
So the hate propaganda laws are separated into two sections. The first, and more serious, but also less often prosecuted, is Section 318 of the Criminal Code, which is advocating genocide. So that section reads that everyone who advocates or promotes genocide is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years. Now, genocide is specifically defined under subsection 2 as an act committed with the intent of destroying, in whole or in part, any identifiable group, specifically killing members of that group, or deliberately inflicting upon that group life conditions calculated to bring about the destruction of that group. So for the Crown Attorney to prove that someone's advocating or promoting genocide, they have to prove that the person is actually calling for the killing of individuals or the...
I wonder if, like, calling to end whiteness qualifies. Does calling to end whiteness qualify as a call to genocide? Just curious.
Purposeful imposition of conditions that are so bad that they would most likely die, or a large number of them would be certain to die. Now, an identifiable group is also specifically defined in this section. So an identifiable group is defined in this section as any section of the public distinguished by color, race, religion, national or ethnic origin, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or mental or physical disability. Section 319 is then public incitement of hatred, and there's two ways that individuals can be charged under that section. The first is under subsection 1 that says that everyone who, by communicating statements in any public place, incites hatred against any identifiable group where such incitement is likely to lead to a breach of the peace.
I'm going to slow this down.
Any identifiable group where that everyone who, by communicating statements in any public place, incites hatred against any identifiable group where such incitement is likely to lead to a breach of the peace is guilty, and the maximum is 2 years on that charge. And the second is under subsection 2 that says everyone who, by communicating statements other than in private conversation, willfully promotes hatred against any identifiable group is guilty. Now,
Abolishing whiteness has never been more urgent. Interesting. Harvard Magazine. Abolish the white race. Interesting. Your independent source for Harvard News since 1898. It's time for whiteness as usual to end. Interesting. The United Church of Canada. What? 12 steps towards ending white supremacy. Oh my God. Here's like the 12 steps from like the 12-step program. That's interesting. Let's keep going through this video. I don't want to get sidetracked.
Group has the same definition for both sections 318 and section 319. Now, section 319, the Crown does not have to prove that the individual willfully incited hatred, but they do have to prove that what they said was something that would be likely to cause a breach of the peace. Subsection 2 does not require any proof that the peace might be breached, but it has a more onerous requirement that it be proved that the person willfully promoted hatred by the comments that they made. The case law in all of these sections says that the incitement must be both public and direct. The case also says that promoting hatred requires more than encouraging ill will. It must be direct and active stimulation of hatred, and the accused must be proved to promote an emotional state of an extreme and intense nature. And the Supreme Court...
This is all... I'm excited to hear his commentary on this, because this all is like... If they sound really angry, then it's bad. Then we're going to deter them. And like, it just goes to... like, because the flip side, guys, is when Trudeau is like talking about unvaccinated people, and he's like, do we even tolerate these people? I mean, he sounds nice. It sounded nice when he said that. Do we even tolerate these people? But it also implies we got to get rid of these people. These people. Now, when he said that en français on like CBC Canada radio or whatever, whatever French station it was. He was like, they don't believe in science. They hate women. What do we do with these people? Do we even tolerate these people? You know, it's our political enemies, or I won't even say our political enemies. Anybody who is in sort of the business of demonizing groups effectively, keyword, they do it in a sort of cryptic way. They do it in a passive aggressive way. Oh, no. I'm love and light. I'm love and light, but I'm just against racism. And you're racist. And that means I'm dehumanizing you. And that means people should hate you. That means people should hate your guts and think that you are everything wrong with society. But I'm nice. I'm just here to be a good person. I'm just saying because you like to tweet, or because someone that you liked to tweet or said something, you're actually the worst person ever. You're the most morally wrong thing. That's the cause of all of our society's ills. But I have a heart and a rainbow flag in my bio. So that's not hate, right? That's not hate. That's because it sounded nice when they talked about it.
Decision titled Her Majesty the Queen and Andrews, Justice Corey stated, quote, hatred is not a word of casual connotation. To promote hatred is to instill detestation, enmity, ill will, and malevolence in another. Clearly, an expression must go a long way before it qualifies within the definition of Section 319, sub 2.
We shouldn't even be legislating this, I don't think. I mean, like, if I hate pedophiles, like, you know, it's a kind of cheap example, but like, if I hate pedophiles, I should be able to be like very, you know, not like, you know, I think I should be able to hate things. I think I should be able to hate evil things. I don't think that's outrageous to say, because evil people are out there, dishonest people are out there who do immoral things that are worthy of hatred. You know, it's sort of invalidating, you know, humanity. It invalidates the human experience to say, no, you should never be angry. You know, it'd be nice if we were never violent, but people are going to be violent because they're human beings. But the difference is this is an emotion that we all have. And it's not even, you know, it's not even causing any direct harm to anyone. So anyway.
2.
In defense of hate.
So I think this shows right at the beginning that it's very difficult to prove these sections because of the intensity of the hatred that has to be engendered by the words that are spoken or propagated by an individual. So the Crown has to prove that the individual either directly intended to promote hatred, or that the words they uttered it was just so obvious that would occur, that it was certain or substantially certain that hatred would result, that intention is imputed to them. So there's certainly very little room for gray area, and it would seem that comments made by individuals have to be very obvious in their intent in order for the Crown to prove the case. So let's take a look at these cases that have come up in the media recently, dealing first with Mr. Patron or Patron, who was charged on February the 17th. The video in question is entitled, quote, Beware the Parasitic Tribe, unquote. According to the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, parasitic tribe is a specific reference to Jewish people. I'm not certain that that's something in common knowledge that courts could take judicial notice of. Judicial notice is when something is so widely known that courts can accept it without there being evidence to establish that point. So, for example, someone were to say the sky is blue, the court can take judicial notice of the fact that the sky is blue because this is so widely known, and you don't need a scientist to come to explain that that is in fact the case. I'm not so certain that everyone knows that parasitic tribe refers to Jewish people. I suspect they might have to call experts to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt that that is in fact the case. In the video in question, Mr. Patron or Patron, he never actually mentions Jewish people. Now, he does make a number of accusations against these individuals.
Everywhere these people go, they infiltrate the media, they hijack the central bank, and they infect the body politic like a parasite. and they profit.
He could be talking about anyone, honestly. He could be talking about any group. Is he talking about Somalians? Maybe Brazilians? Somalians are in media a lot, right? Yeah, I think I heard that.
Profit from our wars, and they seek to control and demoralize us in every aspect
I feel like he's just talking about like liberal politicians, though. You know?
of what we try to do. It's their world. And if they had their way, our entire way of life would be eradicated. They don't like us. In fact, they despise us.
Now, a number of these
I think he's actually talking about journalists. Maybe that's the parasitic tribe. Just a thought.
accusations seem fairly vague to me. I think that the argument would be that they promote hatred because he's accusing these people of doing things that most people would not be happy with and that they don't like, and he's saying that they're trying to destroy our way of life, for example. So the inference is that you're going to hate someone who's trying to destroy your way of life. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network, in their complaint filed with the RCMP, suggested that the things said by Mr. Patron in his video have been definitively defined as equaling hate by the Supreme Court of Canada in the case of Her Majesty the Queen and Keegstra. I'm not certain that they're right in their interpretation of Keegstra. That case specifically dealt with the constitutionality of sections 318 and 319 of the Criminal Code and didn't deal directly with whether the things that Mr. Keegstra said constituted proof of advocating genocide or promoting hatred. Now, I think it is worth noting that Mr. Keegstra was accused of specifically accusing the Jewish people, and he apparently was a school teacher who actually taught his students that Jewish people were, quote, sadistic, child killers, and inherently evil. I suspect that Mr. Patron or Patron's defense lawyer, or perhaps himself if he decides to represent himself, would argue that Mr. Keegstra was much more direct in his incitement and much harsher in the things he was saying. For example, saying that people kill children is going to enrage people more, I suspect, than saying that they want to destroy Canadian way of life. Do Mr. Patron's accusations rise to the level of promoting an emotional state of extreme and intense nature? I think that's something for a court to decide. It seems to me that this video may be a bit in the gray area. I think there's certainly arguments to be made for both sides. Now, Mr. Patron was also charged with advocating genocide under Section 319 of the Criminal Code. This charge, I think, it's much clearer that the Crown will have an extremely difficult time in proving. Based on the Canadian Anti-Hate Network complaint, I take it that where they say he's advocating genocide is when he says near the end of the video,
And what we need to do, perhaps more than anything, is
this guy's intense. I'm curious if nationalist.ca is still operating.
to remove these people once and for all from our country.
based on the definition that we covered of advocacy of genocide, I don't think that meets it. He's calling for people to be removed from Canada. Now, I would suggest that removal is clearly not killing them, that's deporting them. And I think it's far from clear that deportation of people on its face would meet the definition of imposing conditions that are calculated to bring about the destruction of people.
Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I do remember hearing about this case a while ago. I thought he actually did say unidentifiable group. I thought he actually did refer to, I assumed that he may have referred to Jewish people in that video, but it is interesting that he didn't even say Jewish people. But the fact that it was like, no, that you mentioned that it's in the media. Therefore, we know who you're talking about, and that's enough to just damn.
Turning then to the Ale House in London, Ontario. I have an article here from the London Free Press titled, "Did Downtown Pub's Controversial Sign Cross Criminal Line?" So as we can see the sign in the picture here, it's as I said, we love Chinese people, but we hate, basically they're saying that we hate the
We got to do this right now, guys. We got to do this. We got to do this. We got to do this right now, guys. We got to do this right now. Let's go. Classic. Did I commit a hate crime by tweeting that? I don't know. Anyway, let's keep going with the video.
The CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and the case goes on to describe how police erred in not charging a downtown London bar owner for signage some called divisive and even racist, one legal activist says.
I do want to point out, this was before it was like common to call out China, foreign interference. That's a very common thing. Back in 2021, you would get in trouble for inferring that the virus came from China. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't even be able to say that on YouTube right now, or like back then rather. But after 2021, I think it might have been, maybe it was the end of 2021 when they actually said, oh yeah, you know what? Actually, maybe it did come from a lab leak in China. And then you were allowed to talk about it on YouTube. It was a very interesting how you couldn't associate China with the virus or with a Wuhan lab at first. That was very, very bad. You'd be a horrible person for doing that. And then a year later, you could talk, that was a plausible thing because finally CNN or the New York Times posted an article to say, actually, maybe that is true. But those people we shit on before for being bad for talking about that, they're still horrible. Absolutely horrible. Irredeemable.
And Sam Troskow, a Western University law professor, said he believes the signs outside Dundas Street's Ale House, which called COVID-19 the China virus, sparked intense public criticism and may violate Canada's hate speech laws. With all due respect to Professor Troskow, I think he's clearly wrong that sign runs afoul of Canada's hate propaganda laws. Firstly, I think that it fails on being directed towards an identifiable group. As we've outlined, identifiable groups relate to religious groups, ethnicities, nationalities, and nowhere in that definition do you find political parties. So I don't think that the Chinese Communist Party would qualify as an identifiable group under the provisions of Sections 318 or Section 319 of the Criminal Code. So right there, it would not qualify as hate propaganda because it's not directed towards an identifiable group as defined by the Criminal Code of Canada. Secondly, I would suggest that deploring a genocide...
Interesting. So if you even add just a moniker of like the Chinese Communist Party. I don't hate Chinese people. I hate the Chinese Communist Party. I don't hate East Indians. I just don't like East Indians that are in my way downtown Toronto. Is that, you know what I mean? That's an interesting qualifier. But I feel like in the country of Canada, they're not going to do you any favors if you're a white person talking about a minority. I don't think that's how the laws are set up. Pretty cynical on that one.
The Canadian Parliament itself condemned by a vote of 200.
By the way, you're allowed to call for whiteness and wanting to end white people. That's probably fine. You can paint with a broad brushstroke if you're talking about white people. It's fine.
66-0 on the 22nd of February 2021. Condemning a genocide is clearly not engendering hatred. As for calling COVID-19 the China virus, well, the media is frequently referring to various strains of COVID-19 based on where they've first been identified. So you have the UK strain of COVID-19, you have the Brazil strain, the South Africa strain, etc. COVID-19 was originally identified in Wuhan, China. Certainly the argument can be made that using the same naming techniques that the media uses for various strains, calling the original COVID-19 the China virus is in keeping with those naming practices. Certainly no one would accuse the media of promoting hatred. Therefore, I think it would be very difficult to make out a charge against the owner of the alehouse. And that's why he was never charged, because the police looked into this, they determined that the grounds did not exist to lay charges under the criminal code. This video is not legal advice. You should always contact a lawyer for specific advice tailored to your situation. You can call me at my 1-855 number listed below, or another lawyer. This week's episode of Don't Talk TV, we've looked at the hate propaganda provisions of the Criminal Code of Canada, and then we've looked at 2 specific instances in the news where this has come up, and did
I just want to go back to this article. London Free Press. So this was downtown London. Have I been to the ale house? I went to school there in London. But I wanted to just say, like, this article and this sort of guy that he quotes in it right here, Western University law professor, this might be hate speech laws. Like this article functions as a chilling effect, because this probably came across my eyeballs back during the pandemic, and it was like, whoa, like, this bar owner's getting in trouble for saying this. And that sends a message to the public, right? That sends a message of like, oh, you can't do that. Oh, a lawyer said it's going to be hate crime law. And like, the media plays a huge function in silencing people, not by even charging, but threatening to charge, having some useless academic idiot to be like, no, that's against the rules. Don't do that. Don't do that. And more people in Canada, unfortunately, give in to that. Don't do that. Oh, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. Oh, my God. And it's because they have no confidence in pushing back against the insanity. The only sort of confidence, the only sort of small little lane they get is, well, I don't like Trudeau, and I'm going to vote for the Conservative Party. But, like, is that even pushing back against the real problem? We need to be pushing with 2 hands against this widespread managerial class of people who are imposing their politics upon Canadians. Some people call it woke. Personally, I think woke is sort of it's not a tangible, it's not a good term. It's not specific enough. And it's a pretty clear pattern that our country is hostile towards Canadians. Like the Canadians who have lived here, been here for a while, majority white, a lot of them more Christian, and they actually care about this country and its history, representing and reflecting that. And there is an open hostility to those people in this country, and that's kind of a lot of what this managerial class is opposing, by finding people who don't worship sodomy and worship the rainbow flag. But people don't have any confidence in fighting against this, because not enough people are actually talking about that. Rebel News is not really talking about that. True North is not really talking about that. They're just saying, nope, just Trudeau. That's the only problem. And the reason people don't have more confidence is because there is not enough voices. There's not enough professional storytelling to kind of embolden people to show them what's actually happening. What I'm going to be doing is creating a documentary that is professional and tells the story and identifies the enemy and the villain of this story, which is this biased political media class of smear merchants, of people who are basically left-wing radicals imposing their politics upon people and just destroying everyone who's in their way, everyone who dares to speak up. And people need to hear the story. But if you want to support, please go to givesendgo.com/SaveFreeSpeech. We have a lot planned. We almost have all of the interviews in Ontario done. There's still a few people that we need to get in the bag and interview for the documentary in Ontario. I want to name drop right now, but I won't. But it's good. We got a lot of people in the bag already in terms of who we interviewed. And there will be some clips coming out before Christmas, that's for sure. But if you want to support what I'm doing, help bring the story to more Canadians, help bring the confidence to more Canadians to actually identify the problem, identify the villain, and then we can all start pushing it back against that villain. Because we all really know that, getting Trudeau out is not going to solve this problem, not by a long shot. We need to embolden ourselves to not be afraid of these smear merchants. But it's at givesendgo.com/SaveFreeSpeech. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in tonight. How are we doing in the chat? Verani only has power online. No, I think he's got more than power online. He's connected with the Aga Khan and everything. He's connected with, he's got more than that, I'm sure. James Lindsay quoting you? That's kind of interesting. Mayor of Emo, yeah. Well, thanks for hanging out, guys. Really appreciate it. Caesar says, you didn't say the magic word. Oh, can you please donate? Can you please donate to the fundraiser? That would be great. No, it's good. It's good. You know, it's my first documentary. I've done a lot of videos, a lot of interviews, but this documentary is, I'm learning a lot. I kind of have this, I don't want to say mentor necessarily, but this guy is helping us. This award-winning documentarian is helping us through this this larger storytelling process, and I'm really excited to see. I'm excited to show it to people, and bring it all together. Richard Mitchell says, "Thank you for having Nicholas Wansbutter on." Hey, my pleasure. He's a great guy. He's very well educated, and he gets it. You know, he's not afraid to be like, it seems like they're targeting white people hiking in the woods who have the wrong politics instead of pedophiles. Kind of weird. Kind of strange that the RCMP would have those priorities. But anyway, I'm going to get some dinner. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. What's next? Am I going to be streaming later this week? I don't know what's planned this week. I just know I got a lot more work to do. Oh, if you haven't seen it, oh man. If you guys haven't seen the new video, I dropped it actually not long before this stream. But it's very important that you go watch this video. Because, actually, I want you guys to go watch it so you can help the algorithm, okay? So go help the algorithm if you haven't seen it already. It is the latest video on my channel. It's called "The Liberal Party Does Not Care About Kids." The Liberal Party does not. The Liberal Party does not care about kids. I'll put it in the chat. Go give that a watch. It's very obvious stuff, but people need to hear it. Like, this is why Bill C-63 is not really coming from people who've ever cared about children. So go give that a watch. Thank you so much for watching. Love you guys. You guys have been great. And until next time, we'll see you later. Talk to you soon. Yeah.